Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Bamidbar, and we start the new book of Sefer Bamidbar, which is often translated as Numbers, but also really means in the desert. We're in the wilderness during our path from Egypt, from Mitzrayim to Israel. And as we're on this way, we have this Parsha, which goes through in great detail how everybody camped in the desert, which tribe was next to which, where everybody dwelt, how the whole camp was set up. And in the midst of that discussion, there is an exchange that happens between the eldest child of every family and the tribe of Levi. And what this exchange is about is that the eldest children were supposed to be the ones who were going to have the honor of carrying the parts and the vessels of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, as they traveled from place to place. And then the sin of the golden calf, the Chet Egel, happened, and the eldest participated in that sin, and they lost this honor. And now the tribe of Levi, which did not participate in this sin, has been asked to come and take over the role of these eldest. And it's kind of a public thing that happens, and there's an exchange. They have to each be counted. There needs to be a clarity of who's taking whose place and how many there are from each group. And it was probably really hard for the oldest children to go through this. I'm going to read you the verse, one of the verses that talks about this section. And it says, Kachat HaLevi'im Tachat Kol Bechor B'nei Yisrael. Take the Levi, and he will come and he will replace each of these eldest from among the Jewish people, from among the Israelites. And this word tachat also means like underneath, and it's almost like the Levi is coming and uprooting the eldest child and taking that child, who's an adult, right, taking that person out of their role. And so whatever they had envisioned for what it would have been like, all of the dreams they might have had about the honor of carrying the parts of the Mishkan through the desert and being part of that spiritual group, that was now removed from them, and they were uprooted from who they were, and maybe left feeling lost, maybe left to really sit within their questions about why they sinned and how they ended up losing their destiny and what was fated for them. And as I was thinking more about this, it brought to mind a conversation that I had this week with a friend of mine. And this friend of mine, who I hadn't spoken to in a while, was sharing with me how she had this project that she had been working really hard on, and she had put a lot of creative energy into it, and it had seemed like it was really going somewhere and it was really going to work out. And then due to a number of different challenges that she faced, including like fiscal challenges that came into play, the project kind of was ready to die. There was like nothing behind it anymore. And as I listened to her explain the process and the story behind this, she did something that I found really amazing. She kind of sat with it and she reflected on what had gone wrong all along and what the story was, and maybe decisions she made along the way that might have brought about where she was in that moment, might have led her to this point. And then in what felt to me as an observer a very fast turnaround, she kind of shifted her mind and was like, okay, but now here's what I'm going to do with it. And she just like reinvented herself and reinvented the project in a way that was so strong and so hopeful and so resilient. And I wonder what it was like for these eldest, if they had that same experience as my friend did, if they had that moment where they were sitting with this and saying, oh, we lost this because of what we did. And then did they have a moment where they said, okay, and now what will we do next? How will we reinvent ourselves? How will we find a way to keep going so that we don't always sit in this moment of looking back and saying, I regret, I wish, if only, and instead say, okay, but now I will do X, Y, or Z. I will now reinvent myself. And I wonder if they had the same strength or how they dealt with it, if they did it in the same way that my friend did. So for this Shabbat, I invite us all to think about moments where perhaps we also faced something where something was taken from us, or we lost an experience that we had hoped we would have, or we had to face a career change that we weren't looking forward to, that we thought we would go in one direction and now we were going to have to pivot. And just think and reflect about, what did you do in those moments? Were you able to reinvent yourself? How were you able to do it? Were you able to pivot in a certain way? And if you're going through a moment like that right now, where you thought things were going to go a certain way and it seems that it's not going to work out as you had planned, what's your next step? How can you pivot? How can you move forward? And how can you reinvent yourself so that you can continue to walk from Egypt to Israel, to the Promised Land? Shabbat Shalom.